The topic of the conversation today, as you can see from this title slide, is how do we improve outcomes for our students leveraging digital communities? The idea for this webinar is really, I believe a lot of the attendees coming today are also attending EPSIA next week. And so we knew going into that conference, it's a very busy conference, lots to do, lots to see. And we thought for those of you who are interested in this topic, because we will be there, it might be nice to get a little preview of what Inscribe is, so that if this is something that you're thinking about, you would kind of know what we do, how we might be able to help you, and that would facilitate if you wanted to come find us at the conference, come meet us at our booth or talk to us afterward, a deeper conversation. So we're going to keep it pretty high level today. We're going to talk a little bit about community as a concept. We'll go through some of the core features of Inscribe itself, and then I'll talk about some of the outcomes that our partners have seen over the past, previous year or so. I think we're scheduled for an hour. I am going to try and keep this to 30 minutes, keep it a little bit light, give you a little bit of time back in your day, but we'll see how it goes. And of course, feel free to ask questions along the way. We are recording this, so we'll send out that recording afterward as well. It would be great to know if you want to take a minute to just introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know what brought you here today. As a way of introduction, my name is Katie Kapler. I am one of the co-founders and CEO here at Inscribe, so I'm going to be guiding us in our conversation. I'm also joined by my colleague, Erin Knox, who's our Chief Revenue Officer. Erin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I joined Inscribe about a year ago, but I've spent 20 years in education technology. Was particularly inspired by Inscribe's ability to impact social capital for learners and drive really positive, tangible incomes, which we'll talk about today. I'm also sharing role of the sort of housekeeper. So the role of housekeeper. So you'll see me posting links and other things throughout the webinar and chat. So as Katie references case studies and things like that, please keep an eye out for those in chat. So thank you.
Terrific. Yeah. And as I said, if you have questions along the way, please put them into the chat. And we want to make this as conversational as possible. So we'll pause along the way and answer those questions as they come up. Just to get us started, I think this topic of community has been relevant for many years, is even more relevant today. We saw a big rise in the focus on community and community building during COVID as people started to recognize how important these types of human connections are for student health and well-being and motivation. I think in the current atmosphere, we're seeing an even deeper interest in some of these spaces. What's nice about the application of community on campus, and we'll see this as we go, is that it is a solution that you can easily and affordably offer to all of your students, but it tends to have an outsized positive impact on those students who are coming from underserved backgrounds or who may not have the resources to achieve some of these connections independently. So knowing that you can adopt a single solution that benefits all, but still gets at those vulnerable populations can be a very positive and reassuring note, I would say, just in today's climate. We'll touch on that a little bit more as we go. So, excuse me, my participant panel is in the way. So we work primarily with what we would call non-traditional learners, not exclusively. So really all students, and you'll see as we go through here, benefit from these spaces. And when we think about non-traditional learners, probably the largest bulk of that are students who are learning online. And we know that those are students who are working, parenting, they've got tons of other things going on in their life. So education is a priority, but it's not their only priority. So there's a couple of things that we think about so we always have to honor flexibility of time and location for these learners. We have to kind of meet them where they are to help them succeed. It's also worth recognizing that students learning in this modality are naturally isolated from their peers in their program. They get to interact with them in the classroom. I'm sure many of them are doing some type of group work as part of that, but they don't have those casual interactions that students on campus kind of get naturally every day. And studies have shown that the impact of that can be one of increased sense of imposter syndrome, decreased motivation, and a really, I probably don't have to tell you, a significant number of these students are not going to finish their degree or their certification. So what can we do to help them? One of the things that virtual communities do, and I like to think about a virtual community as sort of a simple solution to a very complicated problem. And the reason is they're not difficult to implement, and they really touch on a lot of the challenges, touch on improving a lot of the challenges that institutions face. One would be it's a really easy way to centralize information. So if you have information for students and services for students that are highly fragmented, you can kind of bring all of them and make them accessible in one location. They also drive collaboration and communication between your students. So it helps students meet other people like them with similar backgrounds, maybe facing similar struggles. And when they are able to come together, that helps those students not only gain a sense of like, hey, I'm not the only one out there who might be struggling with this, but actually find practical solutions to problems that might be getting in the way of their ability to succeed. Communities are not just about peer-to-peer interaction. You can also bring other members of your institutional community into them. So maybe this is staff, like advisors and coaches. It could be faculty, could be your alumni. So you're really opening up the opportunity for collaboration and communication across a wide group of individuals. And that's kind of up to each institution, how they think about the size and shape of that virtual space. There are, I'm going to skip over this slide for a moment, other than to say that we're going to talk in a minute about sense of belonging. Belonging and establishing sense of belonging is something that happens at different levels of a student's interaction. So you can see here, it can be things that are happening in the classroom, at my program level, outside of the institution. It's complicated, really. And what this slide is trying to say is that although belonging is important, it's not always super simple to understand how to impact that for your learners and how to do that in a sustainable way. And that's another thing that community can do. It gives students a consistent place where they can go to address some of the challenges that we see here. But that really leans into what we would call our theory of change. And so we're going to give some really tangible examples of what is a virtual community in a minute. And we can see that we've said, hey, virtual communities are great for online and non-traditional students. They can do all these wonderful things. But how do we really improve outcomes? What is it that the community is doing that is driving outcomes? And when we talk about outcomes, I mean increased persistence term over term, higher matriculation rates for students who are interested in your programs, higher graduation rates. But what is really at the essence of that? And we really think it's three things. So one is we are helping students develop question-seeking behavior. That seems really, really simple, but even in the post-secondary world, a lot of students either don't know who to go to when they have a question or are too shy or embarrassed to raise their hand when they need help. When you put individuals into a larger community, other students are going to start modeling that behavior for them. You're always going to have some subset of students who are not afraid to raise their hands, ask questions, start seeking advice. And as an individual who's a bit shy or nervous about that, if I see another student doing that successfully, so they ask this question, they get a bunch of positive reinforcement, they get an answer, maybe it's even a question I already had, that is going to encourage me to go ahead and model that behavior as well and start to ask questions myself. So we're teaching them in this safe space that it's okay to not know, that it's okay to ask for help. And that is a skill set that not only helps them within their education career, but will help them further on once they've graduated and moving onward or upward in their career. The second thing that we really focus on is sense of belonging. So we touched on that earlier. The feeling of being welcome, valued, and acknowledged by the people around me. This is not something that comes for free, and it is not something that you can just tell students to feel. So if you have a student that comes to you and they're feeling a bit uncertain, just saying like, hey, you belong here is not really enough. So what the community does is it creates a very authentic way and very organic way for students to find others who are similar to them, who share their same background and experience, and to interact with them in a natural way that isn't prescribed by the institution. So you're building this sense of belonging in a really organic and natural way that gives it greater strength and greater persistence over time. And there's many, many studies that have shown how a strong sense of belonging leads to better student outcomes within school and on into their career. Let me do one more, and then I'm going to pause to see if we have any questions that have come in. The last leg of our stool, so to speak, is this concept of social capital. So that is really about the relationships and the network that you're building. I think we all agree, anyone who has been through a post-secondary experience, that the content that we absorbed in the classroom was one of the benefits that we got from our educational journey. The relationships that we developed, the people that we met, the network that we built is another piece that has become core to the value of that experience. But if you're learning online and you're not meeting people, you're not connecting with people, you're missing out on this really important component. So the community helps fill that gap. It makes it possible for you to meet people across the institution and program that you might otherwise not have met. It gives you the chance to help people. So you're building this set of strong and loose ties, strong and weak ties that, again, helps you in your moment, and then also you can carry with you once you've graduated. So those are kind of the three things that underlie the community, but ultimately we're driving these outcomes in terms of persistence, retention, and graduation. So let me pause there. Aaron, anything in the chat that you would
There
like me
is.
to address?
Teresa asks, is there a way these communities can identify at-risk students, or maybe those students who aren't as comfortable being vocal but are engaged by watching and consuming the information being shared?
Great question. So absolutely. And there's two answers to your question. I think some of it might show up in the slides coming forward here, but so remember that your community is going to look and form very similar to any virtual community that you may have been a part of. You're going to have a subset of students who are actively raising their hand, asking a lot of questions. And of course, one of our goals is to teach students that that is a okay behavior, and to help promote their confidence in doing that. You're still going to have a large population of students or individuals who are really consuming what's coming out of the community. So your lurkers, so to speak. There's two things I would say about that. One is, don't discount the value that a lurker is getting from these spaces. We hear from students all the time. We'll do a survey of students in the communities, and we'll get narrative conversation back from students who we can see never actually posted anything about how amazing it was. And what they say is, just seeing that somebody else had the same question as me, or just knowing that somebody else was worrying about this thing that I was worrying about, was so reassuring and helpful to me and made me really feel like I can do this as well. So don't discount the value that the lurker population is going to get. With that said, one of the nice things about the Inscribe platform is that it comes with a really robust set of analytics. And the analytics isn't just about who's active, it's about who's not active. So you can see in these spaces who is maybe missing out on the value of the community, and think about ways to run additional campaigns, additional outreach to drive them back into the space and maybe give them a little bit more benefit from what's happening in there. And then we have a few other things in terms of catching students who might be struggling, which will come up in the set of slides that we have here. So I'll wait and speak to that when that pops up. Anything else, Aaron, you want me to touch on?
No, I think you hit it all.
Awesome. Okay, so let's just take a look at some of the high level features of what you would see in a digital community like Inscribe. So we've already talked about, what is a community? So it's a virtual space. It is a safe space. So think this community, unlike, we get this question all the time. How is this different than Discord? How is this different than Facebook? Inscribe is designed to be integrated. Well, there's many answers to that, but I'll give you two. One is Inscribe is designed to be integrated into the tools you're already using. That means better data, that means a better experience for your learners, but it also means that it is naturally a safe place for them to come and speak and be vulnerable. Your participants bring a different persona to the community when it is integrated and not anonymous than they would if they're interacting in some external social media site. So students really feel like this is sanctioned by my institution. I can feel like I trust this space to bring myself forward. So you're going to get more authentic conversations. The other is that, and you see it noted here, Inscribe is a social space, but it also is a knowledge repository. So unlike some spaces where conversation takes place, it's sort of like an infinite scroll. You know, somebody talked about something 3 days ago. By the time I get in there, it's off the page and it may as well never have existed. We really focus on thinking about every interaction and every conversation as knowledge generation. And we want to make sure that that information is available to all of your students. So we're democratizing access to information across your student population. So everything is searchable. The system is going to recommend answers to you if it thinks they're already in the system. That's a unique component of what we do. So if you're really thinking about a virtual community strategy, make sure that whatever platform you're exploring, you're thinking about those two pieces. Does it offer social collaboration? And does it function as a knowledge repository that will help my students and myself disseminate information more effectively? We already talked about those. So we talked about this, deeply integrated. So we integrate into all the major learning management platforms. We will also integrate into whatever other tools you have. So portal, website, mobile apps, any place your students are already going, we can put access points to your community there. So a seamless experience for your learners. We also have our own mobile app, so students could download their communities and just keep them in their back pocket, get notifications there, interact with folks there. Again, it's all about meeting students where they already are.
Katie,
There are
2 slides ago, you were in an instance or had a screenshot from an instance at the University of North Texas. I'm going to
yeah,
drop. So there's such a great story of an institution that has very successfully utilized Inscribe. So I'm dropping a case study on the University of North Texas in the chat if anybody's interested.
awesome. And I think we do have a slide at the end where we'll talk a little bit about, we'll go a little deeper on that particular use case, but it's good.
Perfect.
Good catch. Just looking in the, oh, that was you in the chat. Okay, perfect. So 3 main components of the Inscribe community. One is the conversations area. This is where students are asking questions, answers are coming in, very student driven, very iterative. This is the place where that concept of knowledge repository largely gets lost by most platforms. So we're going to capture these, what questions were asked, what answers were given, what are most popular, what are students talking about. This is all the kind of data that you can gather within your Inscribe community. And this is, again, you can see examples here of social conversations that are taking place, people meeting each other and talking to each other, and also, practical questions around, I need advice on this thing, or has anybody experienced this before? Really thinking about those 2 components of what's going to happen here. This is a great example of some of the social conversation that can take place. People, and these are examples from real communities across Inscribe. You probably have students that are either not in city, not in state, or maybe even all the way around the world, letting them meet each other and find some commonalities. Maybe everybody has a similar type of dog at home, or they're interested in something, or they're sharing the same program. Just like really easy ways to start to build connection across my peer group. It's also, you'll find the other component of social isn't just getting to know each other. It's about supporting each other from a social emotional perspective. I think mental health and the concerns and opportunities around student well-being have become, from what we've seen, not just top of mind for institutions, but core to many strategic plans that institutions have built for the next 5 years. And there's a lot of really amazing apps that are specifically targeted around mental health and connection to counselors. But Inscribe can also get to that by allowing students to help and support one another. When you hear from a fellow student that they are maybe worrying about or struggling with the same thing that you are, there's a different reassurance that you get from that than when you get that from a coach or even from a counselor. I'm not saying one isn't done in exclusion of the other, but it's such a nice compliment to have that peer-to-peer conversation as a component of it. It also provides invaluable insight to you as an institution. So you can actually see what your students are worrying about, concerned about. We've had schools, for example, one of our schools had student parents who were talking about the challenges of childcare or not having as many resources as they needed to be able to learn while they were raising their family. And it spurred the school to create, they already had all these great resources for student parents. The students didn't know about them. So seeing that the students were still struggling with this, they used that information to create an area within their community that specifically spoke to the resources available for student parents. Were able to get those resources in front of these students in a much more effective way. So you're learning from your students, you can react to that and essentially close some of those support gaps that might still exist. And this is really about that more tactical stuff. I just have a question about this particular thing, and I'd love to hear from somebody who has been there, done that before. This is also a really neat place where alumni can come into play in your communities, because if you think about it, who better to answer questions about what was your experience in school and then how did that translate once you graduated than this entire community of alumni that you may or may not be fully tapping into. And these are people who, love your institution, want to give back, maybe don't have the financial means to give back in that way right now, but being able to step in and provide a little bit of answer resource support for the existing students is easy and something that they're excited to be able to come back and bring to the table for you. Um, So we have within I talked earlier about some of the ways that you can gather insights in your community and sort of identify students who might be struggling. One of the other tools that we have built in is what we call Rosie. So Rosie is our technology assistant that lives in our communities. And one of the things you can see Rosie's popped up here. One of the things Rosie does is she just keeps an eye on the health of the community. And if a student posts something, Rosie runs that post through a sentiment API. So she's measuring the emotion of the post. And if the emotion of the post starts to appear negative, like very frustrated or angry or confused, Rosie will identify that and essentially escalate that post to the moderators of the community. It's not about shutting down that student. It's about helping you as an institution, as a coach, as an advisor, recognize that this student might need a little bit more direct intervention. So as an example here, Kaz is starting to get frustrated. The coach gets notified and then has some choices to make. Do I pick up the phone and call the student? Do I reach out and email them? Do I answer them in the community? Or maybe I have an ability to schedule like a live session with them and get them in front of me. But it's essentially helping you hone in on those students who might need the most help, the fastest. We talked about this already, the concept of the knowledge repository. A couple of ways that manifests. Everything is searchable in the community. So if you already know what you want, you come in, you can search for it. The community will direct you to where that answer is. If you skip that step and start asking a question, Rosie pops up again and will redirect you to where that conversation is already taking place or where that answer already exists. If a student has asked a question and it has been answered, there is no reason that you should have to answer that question again. And we hear all the time from faculty, advisors, I'm answering the same common questions 100 times a semester. So don't do that anymore. Put that information into your community. Make sure that number one, if a student has that question, they get the answer right away. They don't have to wait around, and that you're not restating the same information over and over and over. That's where that efficiency really comes into play. Erin, anything you want me to address in the chat? Are we good to go?
I think we are good. Just some
Awesome.
positive reaffirmations around Rosie and the ability triage students at potentially at risk.
Yeah, and you'll see as Rosie, as we've talked about Rosie here, that Inscribe is very much a human first technology enabled platform. Rosie is there to facilitate, but we don't ever want Rosie to get in the way of humans connecting with each other. Because as we've talked about, when we think about question asking, sense of belonging, social capital, these are behaviors that are really highly impacted by my ability to have actual human connection. So we want to use technology to facilitate that, but not attempt to replace that in any way. The second component, so that was conversations area. So we went a little bit deep on what's happening there, what you might expect to see. The second component of the community are the resources. This is generally reserved for the moderators of the community. It's a more highly curated set of assets. A lot of people have short videos here, links to websites, articles. Many of our partners have started recording short videos from students, from faculty, from alumni, and posting them here as well as just sort of a get to know you kind of idea. But think about it, these are a little more fully formed, and often most people we work with already have a folder of resources sitting somewhere that are underutilized. So we'll move them into your Inscribe community, help you move them into your Inscribe community. Now you can see, are they being viewed? And specifically who is looking at them? People can give you feedback on the resources, whether they're helpful or not, and they can ask follow-up questions. So what was a one-directional communication, maybe on a website or in a folder, actually becomes a conversation back and forth with your learners where they're not just learning from you, but you're learning from them as well in terms of the feedback that they're giving you. And the final sort of main section of the community are what we call live events. Our communities are designed to be asynchronous first. If we're working with non-traditional learners, again, honoring that flexibility of time and space is critical. But we also appreciate that synchronicity has its place in community building and probably has its place in how you are interacting with your students and even your online students. So the live events allows you to do just that. You can schedule a synchronous event, give it a date and time, use whatever tool you're already using. So Zoom, Teams, something else, and then publish it in your community. And students can add it to their calendar. They'll get a notification right before it starts. But whether that's a guest speaker or a career fair or just a social hour that you want to pull together, like giving students the opportunity to meet quote unquote in person alongside the flexibility of that asynchronous community is a really perfect balance that sort of even amplifies the positive impacts of these spaces. Erin, did you want to feel free to add? Erin, I was going to call on you, but then I didn't want to put you on the spot.
Sure.
But if there's anything you want to add in, please
No,
do.
I think the interesting thing with the live events is particularly for online programs, getting students there at many institutions have been difficult, and we've seen a huge uptick in participation in events among online students as a result of posting them in Inscribe. So certainly a very helpful tool.
Yeah, absolutely. Very complimentary to probably what you're already doing as part of your program. And then a platform wouldn't be helpful if you didn't know what was going on. So we have really deep analytics that will show you at a high level what's happening in your communities over time. This data can all be exported. So if you want to combine it with information from other systems, you can. You can also dig, I don't have an example here, but you can dig into an individual member and see specifically what they were doing and what they have been up to. And then we also have a really large data set that you can access through API. So if you want like event level data, that exists under the covers and can also be made available. But philosophically, we understand Inscribe is one element of a larger student success strategy that you have as an institution. So for you to be able to really understand how that's working, we need to give you the data from our platform that you can combine with your other efforts so that you have a more holistic picture of how things are working. We will never hold your data hostage. It's not our mantra is all about, sharing and working together to understand the positive impact that we're having. Okay, so let's just take a few minutes to talk about some examples. We're doing pretty well. We're at half an hour. We'll go probably 10 more minutes. And I'll give you some tangible examples of what schools are doing and what outcomes they're seeing. So here's one of our favorites, Rio Salado Community College. If you've been on some of our other webinars, you've probably heard us talk about them before. Rio Salado is a large community college in Arizona. They started as an online school. So even today, I mean, many, many years ago, but even today, the vast majority of their students are online. If, um, I'm trying to remember the number of students, but in the 15 to 20,000 students. And so they partnered with us to create a virtual community that would allow all of their students a place to come and talk to one another. And that was particularly important because they had students who were coming for a semester, leaving, coming back, right? It was hard to build some continuity of relationship with them through traditional methods. So this virtual community created this space that lived on in perpetuity, and the students could remain there even if they stepped away for a minute and then came back. And we did a wonderful research study with them. So Erin will drop this into the chat so you can take a look, go a little deeper. But what we found was students who were engaging in the community, you can see here, had significantly higher levels of sense of belonging and peer connectedness. And that was only after 6 weeks. So we launched the community, we did a preliminary study with the students, let it run for about 6 weeks and did a follow-up study. And the impact was not just statistically significant, but really amazing to see the influence that the community had for these learners. So we've continued to work with Rio. We've expanded into several other use cases with them, including building academic and learning communities beyond Rio Connect. But this community has been up and running for about 4 years and continues to see positive engagement and positive outcomes for their learners. A similar community, but a very different type of institution, Fort Hays State in Kansas. So Fort Hays is more of a traditional 4-year. They do have a large online population. So about 50% of their students are online and 50% are in person on ground. And what they found was that after surveying their student population, particularly during the COVID period, they found that the in-person students were naturally engaging with each other outside of the classroom, talking to each other about schoolwork and non-schoolwork activities outside of what was prescribed for them. They were trying to get a measure of peer connectedness among their student population. So as you might imagine, students on campus reported fairly high levels of peer connection. When they asked their online students, it was about 80% of online students never spoke to another student about schoolwork or non-schoolwork unless they were told to. So outside of what they were prescribed to do in the classroom, about 80% never talked to each other. And that was shocking and somewhat dismaying for them. So they launched what's called Tiger to Tiger, and it's a virtual community integrated into their Blackboard portal. It was open to all students, so online, on ground, let's bring everybody together. And they allowed their student ambassadors to come in and kind of run the community, and it was wildly successful. So they also did measures of belonging and peer connection. They actually had already very high levels of sense of belonging across their student population, but they saw that needle on peer connection move dramatically, especially for those online students. So really a simple solution that had really outsized positive impact for them, and a slightly different type of school, right, from what we saw at Rio. This third use, so if you're familiar with University of Maryland Global Campus, one of the largest online universities in the world, or in the United States, they're a little unique because they have a huge population of military students. So take all the complexities of an online learner and a non-traditional learner and like amplify it, because now they're all around the world. They might be moving periodically. Access to technology can be a little bit sometimes there, sometimes not. And so trying to get these students to feel a sense of connection with each other is extremely difficult. So what we did is we partnered with them. We implemented a virtual community in their PACE course. This is the course that all new students take to prepare them for their online program. And it's graduate students, undergraduate students, no matter who you are, your first semester at UMGC, you're going to go through this PACE course. And so we integrated the community into there. We had about 8,000 students worldwide, and the students just very much took to the community, asking each other questions, seeking advice from one another, talking about the course materials and what was going on in PACE and how prepared they felt for their online programs. And you can see the outcomes here. Huge jump in this course success rate, which is important for them because remember, this is the gateway into the program. So you need students to succeed in this course so they can progress in their degree. As an uptick in persistence rates where 2%, if you're talking about 8,000 students or ultimately 60,000 students across UMGC, that's a huge number. And not just succeeding in the course, but actually succeeding at an A level. So we were really excited to see this. UMGC has since rolled out Inscribe across the entire institution. So they're building all kinds of cool communities for their learners based on the model that they built here. Okay, any questions, Aaron, that I should address?
So Jacqueline caught a bit of a screw up on my end. I was posting the case studies to just you and I as the panelists, and not to the broader group. So Jacqueline, I will say that there is a peer of ours that typically leads this. It's spring break for her and her family, so she happens to be out. So I have screwed up, but they're in there now. I'm just about to post the case study from the University of North Texas, but thank you so much for saying something.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Very
I usually
embarrassing.
say at the beginning of the call, make sure you post to everybody because it
No,
defaults funny, but I forgot to remind you, Aaron. So
I
I'm
know,
glad
I
that
know,
worked out.
I know. Well,
Yes,
thanks.
we'll be all thankful when Danielle is back. Okay, last use case. So you're going to see some commonalities here, right? Like this is the University of North Texas. Again, a really big online population. They were having some trouble getting students acclimated as part of the onboarding process. And you can see we implemented with them. And this number, honestly, when they told us this number, I think I, for a while, was hesitant to say it because it seemed so outrageous, but they drove persistence rates up an increase of 13% in one semester, after only deploying for one semester. So there was clearly a missing element for their students that was probably somewhat difficult to identify. No student is going to raise their hand and say, like, wow, if only there had been a virtual community space for me to go, right? You're going to hear it in different ways. I wasn't sure where to find support. I felt lonely. I didn't feel like I could succeed in my degree. But all of these challenges that you might try to address one by one and have point solutions for each of them, you can actually deploy a single solution in a community and bring some solution to all of those challenges simultaneously. And I think that's why you see such an outsized bump in persistence, because you're really covering many of the challenges that students would address with a single solution. I also like to point out here that, and I said this a little bit earlier, big community college, more traditional school in Kansas, enormous online worldwide program, innovative school coming out of Texas, right? Like, what do these schools have in common? Well, they have some of the same common challenges for their learners, and they were able to leverage a similar solution to get similar outcomes. So that's the other thing that I think is really nice about a solution like Inscribe. It really can adapt and flex, to meet the needs of any type of institution shape, no matter the shape or size or demographics, and provide value across your entire set of learners. With that, since we've talked a little bit about use cases, the impact on retention and performance, I'm going to have Aaron step in for a second and just talk through what that really means in terms of numbers and ROI for you as an institution. So Aaron, take it away.
Thank you so much. And Katie, the other, just on your prior point, we're seeing a lot of new institutions come to Inscribe. We're about to launch PR on Lindenwood University in Missouri, but more sort of small to mid-sized private institutions that have launched online programs that are now needing to tap into that power of their community to help drive positive outcomes for their learners. So I think yes, all those schools had similar challenges, but I think the other piece of Inscribe is all of those schools have similar assets, which is their community,
Yeah.
faculty, student, staff, alumni, being able to tap into those communities, those cultures, to make sure, particularly online students, feel connected to the institution and can benefit in the way that oftentimes residential students do. So, with that said, I'll jump into my section here. As you've seen, Inscribe is exceptionally outcomes oriented. We've seen really, really tangible results at our institutions. So just to touch on a few others very briefly, we talked about Rio Salado. We've seen Western Governors University see their students twice as using Inscribe are twice as likely to stay enrolled. University of Maryland Global Campus have seen, as did UNT, seen have both seen significant impacts on retention. And then Arizona State University is another example, has seen significant improvement in learning outcomes for students as well. So in a world of education technology that often comes across as a nice to have or a nice supplement to what you're doing, I truly believe that Inscribe is driving some really important results. So, with that said, when we look at kind of the areas that we can address, retention is the big one, and we'll touch on this in just a second. But even being able to retain a few students has a massive financial impact for the institution. When we look at the brand and being able to tap into that culture and that community that already exists to improve the experience for online learners and continue to improve the brand of your online offerings is huge. We're offering another layer of data that doesn't necessarily exist anywhere else about how your students are engaging with these communities. Um, we are, in addition to driving positive outcomes, including helping you retain students, we're also creating a more efficient model. We know that schools are constantly being asked to do more with less. So being able to make it very easy for students to help one another, very easy for them to identify the answers to your questions via kind of tapping into that shared wisdom of the or collective wisdom of the community, and then through we talked about Rosie being able to triage students most at risk, so the resources that you do apply to your students and student success can be laser focused on the efforts that are going to have the greatest impact. If we go to the next slide. So if we look at typically the amount of students that need to be retained to pay for Inscribe, I would say um, Inscribe as a company, we are product and customer focused first. We are in it for the long run, and we certainly, I think, have a very reasonably priced product. So for most of our schools, retaining even a single student pays for it itself. So that's my pitch on the commercial side. So Katie, thank you for letting me share a few slides on that. And the beautiful thing, when I first joined Inscribe, I interviewed about 15 of our clients, and the stories that I heard time over time was how we had impacted these challenges that they had been facing for years around retention, student success, fostering a sense of belonging, better utilizing limited resources. They're all very similar stories and consistent across our customer base, which is great. So,
Yeah.
with that said, Katie, I'll turn it back to you. Of
Yeah, thanks, Erin. And I
course.
thanks for speaking to this. And I think it also just reinforces what we said earlier, which is part of why it's cost effective is it is a fairly simple solution to implement, right? It's not forcing you to change all of the ways that you do business and all of your workflows. It's really designed to fit into that model and add that value for you, minimizing the lift for you and for your institutional partners. With that said, we did, I'd like to say building communities is not total rocket science, but there is some art to it. And that's one of the things that our team here at Inscribe is really good at. We really understand what it takes to design an effective community, launch that community, and then nurture it so that it will grow. And that's part of what we bring to the table, right? We're not just a technology application that we throw over to you and wish you good luck. It's really about that partnership. And so we took some time to write down some of the strategies that we know are really helpful and work the best in this new guide that we put together. So I think Erin's going to drop a link to that in the chat. We'll also send a copy of that in our follow-up as well in case you missed it. But really good practical examples in here of things that you can do to think about community and start to drive community on your campus. And I mentioned, part of this was the lead up to UPSIA. So we will be at UPSIA next week. It's in our hometown here in Denver. We have a couple of sessions on the 25th, one in the morning with Kennesaw State and Alamo colleges. It's a roundtable discussion where we'll talk about the power of community for adult learners. And then in the afternoon at 3:30, we have a big group of people coming together to do a workshop around community building. So each of our partners here will talk a little bit about their own experience building community, and then we'll walk everyone through the process of imagining what a community might look like on your campus and helping you work through that. Also would just love to meet you. So follow that QR code. You can schedule some time with Erin or I to say hi at UPSIA, meet in person. And yeah, we wish you all safe travels coming in. Anything you want to add on